Hi, and welcome to this new tutorial. And today I want to talk about on how you can prepare your track for your mastering engineer or for mixing later in a DAW. You can do that, and you have to do that if you are like me and you are working with hardware. And I usually tend to record all-in-one tracks, all-in-one takes, straight to the output from the Octatrack to the DAW. So finally, I have one track only. It's truly important to make some decision in terms of sound, in terms of mixing, of pre-mixing into your hardware, and this way your track can sound really, really better. Speaking of mixing, you need essentially three tools: EQ, compression, and space. Space can be reverb, space can be a delay, but space can be also panning, and this is so important. Let's have a view first on the track. As you can hear, is a really crowded track, especially because the bass line is heavily affected with an analog fuzz, and in this case it's specifically the Carcosa fuzz from DoD, which I really, really love for guitar bass, but it's also really, really cool for synthesizer. And it's affected by another multi-effects that is Ottone Ampero Stomp 2, that is a guitar multi-effects. But this one also is really, really good for guitar, for synth, sorry. It's really crowded. There's a lot of stuff going on, sonically speaking, because by the right-hand side, there's not so much in this track. We have 4 lane for the drums and 1 for a kind of a percussion, and the bass. The first thing I hear, it's a little bit of clashing from the rumble and the kick. So here's the kick alone, and you see with the rumble. The rumble, it's hitting a little bit the low bass frequencies of the kick. And I don't want that, because I like the kick to be the feather element of my track, not the rumble. The rumble, it's something that is useful, and it fills some space in the low frequencies. It creates a rhythm, but for the frequency perspective, from the frequency perspective, I want the kick to have the main part of the bass. So first thing, we have to use the filter. The filter on the Octatrack has a distortion circuit that is really, really cool, and this is the rumble alone. And how can I roll off a little bit the bass from this rumble? Easily with the filter. And you can really hear. Just hear the difference. is much more solid now, and it's a little bit more in your face, and that's what I want, especially on this track that is techno, so the kick is the main element alongside with the bass. You can also roll off a little bit the high frequencies, but this is in this case not so necessary. Now let's talk about the kick. We have the ability on the filter to switch from 12 dB per octave to 24, and in this case I want 24. It's much more aggressive. Now we can adjust the Q setting only on the high pass, because we have to find the fundamental frequency of the kick and boost a little bit that. So a little bit of Q. Now I'm exaggerating to really find the right frequency. Here. It's here. Yeah, now it's gone. Now we can back up a little bit the Q setting. Yeah, now they start interacting much better together. Let's start the bass. And we can do the same thing with the bass. Now I have my distortion circuit. Let's start that. And let's try to roll off a little bit of the bass, because we want to leave the space for the kick. Hear how much the kick it's bringing out the low frequencies as I roll off the bass from the bass track, from the 303 track. In this case, I want also to roll off a little bit the higher frequencies. Now, the bass part of the spectrum of our track, it's reacting much better one element to each other. So we have throw out the clashing frequencies that are in the same space, and we have do some space for all the elements, all the three elements that we are working on. Now, let's add the hi-hat. Hear the track. It's not a straight in volume and in dynamics hi-hat, so it's not a shotgun, you know, but it's follow some dynamics that I made into the LFO. I have here some volume automation that is really important because it gives you that movement that is bouncing around. And also, I have an LFO on the balance. So and now it's set to random, and easily you can hear that the hat is panning randomly to one side and another. This is creating space for the main elements that are in the middle, because the low frequency have to be in the middle, in the center of your stereo field. This element, the hat and the higher element, can be shifted around. And the same goes for the open hat. I have here also a volume automation. And in this case, I don't have any automation on the panning, because usually I want the open hat be in the middle of the stereo field. But that's my personal choice. You can, of course, pan your open hat. On this pattern, I have here 4 patterns that are connected to the 303, so I can easily switch from pattern to pattern. And this pattern is the first pattern of the track, and is much more clean, so you can hear all the elements that are reacting not one to each other, because we have to do automation per track, so we don't have the ability to have a proper sidechain into the Octatrack, or usually into the machine. Nowadays, the Digitakt can do that, and maybe a bunch of other machine, but it's not so usual. Let's say that. We have this track here that is simply a percussion track, and I have also here an automation on the pan and stop, because I don't want to be I don't want the volume to be automated on this track. Pay attention to one thing that I have here on the on the balance track. Here is random, and here on the balance track it's another waveform, because I don't want that all the elements shift in the same way during the track. I want that certain elements are opposite in shifting, or stuff like that. So this is a very important thing, to make variation and leave space. This is the most important thing. Leave space for every element of your track. This is a resample track, so we don't need to check. Now, we have talked about a little bit on how to EQ your elements, despite the fact we don't use we haven't used an EQ but a filter, but the concept is the same. The filter is kind of EQ, in this case with 2 band. Of course, if you have at your disposal an EQ, a proper EQ like the one in Octatrack or stuff like that, you can use that. I prefer to, unless the sample I choose have a real problem and I have to EQ in certain way to use that sample, but usually I don't use so much the EQ at this stage. I prefer to use the filter, also because the distortion circuit brings out really the harmonics So in a way, you are EQing also with the distortion circuit. By the way, we have talked about EQ, we have talked about a little bit of the space, but we haven't talked about yet on delays and reverb. So this is my main track. I have set this master reverb. You can see the mix, it's a little lower. I have a delay on the 2 head track. Here I have only a comp filter. And I have also a delay on the bass track. Here without. And here with. Pay attention to one thing. This is really important. You have a filter into your delays. And here, how much the delay is messing with the low frequencies. We can sweep out all the base information that we don't need, that we don't want to be delayed. Also, we have to contain the higher frequencies, and this is a thing you want to do pretty much every time you are using a delay or you're using a reverb. This is so important because delays and reverb can produce really a mess in your track if they are not really contained. As you can see in this case on the we don't have any bass information here, so I don't need to use the bass filter, and the sound of this set was perfect. So even I use the width at 127, that's not a problem. Also with the other elements, they are not masking one to each other. By the way, I use all my delays in ping pong mode. Here I use the filter on the lower frequency because I have this variation with this specific sound, with this specific rim sound, and I have to roll out a little bit of the bass frequency. Now, these are only the basic concept. Of course, we can talk about delays and reverb and compression and EQ for days. But the concept is to use your tool, also a simple filter. If you don't have a filter with all this option, it's not a problem. You have a filter that can roll off a little bit of the bass or the higher frequency. Use that. Your master engineer will surely thanks you for that. As I mixing and mastering tech guy, I receive every day tracks that are not properly mixed in a DAW. So it's so important to comprehend the concept that is behind the mixing stage. If you are using the hardware, it's a lot important. The last thing I want to show you is how to use and proper set the master compressor on your Octatrack or in pretty much every machine, because a compressor is a compressor. We have the attack release and threshold. If you are preparing your track for mixing and mastering, you don't want to use so much compression. So maybe you can use it in a parallel way and not directly. So I show you in a minute. To hear the compression, we can use a little hack or trick. So let's start with bringing in the ratio, and I want this ratio to be really extreme because I want to hear what the compression is doing. So ratio, higher ratio makes 127, so it's pretty much. And I start to compress really heavily. Now this mix is squashed. Let's back up a little bit of gain, and now we can start use the attack and release. One golden rule is to, if you want to have more attack on your kicks and on your percussive elements, you have to use slower attack and faster release. And if you want to glue a little bit more all your track together, you can use a little faster attack and a little slower release. So the compression is slow and more cohesive. RMS or peak. Peak is for fast compression, so you want to catch really the peak and compress it. The RMS is for gluing a little bit together all the stuff. So I want RMS for now, and now I can start to hear how pump. We have to compensate the gain. Okay. As you can hear, the pumping effect is really, really wise, you know, and it's obviously too much. So what we can do, we have the ability to mix that. And I think we can have a little bit less of the threshold. We can mix the unaffected signal to the compressed signal. Without. And by mixing just a little bit of the compressed signal, we have gained a lot of dynamics. This is basically the New York Tricks compression. And it's a parallel compression, so we have to mix the unaffected signal to with the compressed signal, and this kind of compression and the end of the chain works really, really better if you are pushing it really hard. Without and with. compensate always the gain, so we don't want to have more volume. We are looking for dynamics. It's a different stuff. Without. And the elements now are a little bit more glued and are bouncing together thanks to the compressor. Just to hear difference. You can hear that in peak mode it's much more aggressive and start to distort, because now we have really high ratio and high settings. And yes, this is it. This was really a view on what you can do before the mix and mastering stage of your track. Sending a cleaner version of your track and just a little bit polished version of your track with the right pan, the right ambience and stuff like that. It's a big help for your mix and mastering engineer or technician. By the way, I have my own mastering service specifically studied for doorless musicians. So if you need some mastering or mixing and mastering, you can check my Gumroad page where you can find all the information and also my usual stuff, samples and instruments for the Octatrack and Polyend tracker and blah blah blah. Thank you for watching, and I hope this tutorial will be useful for you. If you have something that is not really clear, just write in the comment and I will reply as soon as possible. And of course, thank you and see you next time. Bye.